Susan
NTR.
also.
Hello, I haven't seen the break room yet.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Asia for Animals Coalition very first AfA Connect, a series of online events that we have just launched this year. It is so great to see so many familiar and friendly faces and names. I personally, and on behalf of AfA and our members, want to thank everyone for joining the conversation today. For those that don't know me, my name is Lauren and I am the lead coordinator of AfA. So before the session starts, I would like to run through some quick housekeeping items with you that will only take a few minutes. So please remember that this event is currently live streamed on YouTube. If you are joining via Zoom, please ensure that your camera is turned off. Some of those joining us today are accessing from remote locations. So less cameras on will mean a better streaming experience for those who have a poor internet connection. If you want to enable auto captions, please click more at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then click on captions, and you can there set the language to the language that you wish. Could I also please ask you to set your screen name to the name that you registered with so that we can check who's been able to join us today? And if you have any questions, please place them in the chat box. These will be collated by AfA staff members and some will be addressed during the sessions. So I'll also briefly run through who we are. So the Asia for Animals Coalition is not only the largest animal protection network in Asia, but by membership, we are also the largest animal protection network in the world. AfA is composed of 26 core member organizations, representing some of the largest and most well-known animal protection and advocacy organizations in the world. And our network has over 300 member organizations. AfA has also undergone dramatic growth in the past couple of years, and we're now a committed team of 15 staff members spread across 6 countries, all dedicated to helping organizations help animals. At our core, AfA is about creating a united voice for the animals of Asia. We facilitate organizations to collaborate on investigations, campaigns, and reports. We provide a platform to share resources, knowledge, and experience, and we are a center point for networking and connecting like-minded organizations. Our movement to help animals is stronger when we are united and when we collaborate. And by working together, we can be more efficient and impactful in our efforts. AfA also has 7 working groups that bring our members together to collaborate in particular areas of animal advocacy, such as social media animal cruelty, policy work, capacity in animal protection, and issues facing farm animals, macaques, and sanctuaries and rescue centers. So this event's theme is An Inside Job, the importance of supporting within-country advocates. The event is spread across 2 days, and guest speakers will share experiences and lessons learned of why it is so important to understand, support, and collaborate with those working on the ground for animals as a clear and successful strategy to create a better future for all animals. So today, we'll be running 2 sets of concurrent sessions. One session from the Capacity in Animal Protection Coalition, entitled "You're Doing Everything Right, Commonly Faced Challenges Around Asia." And we also have a session from the Macaque Coalition and Sanctuaries and Rescue Centres Coalition, which is divided in 2 parts, with part 1 focusing on broad challenges of the release of rehabilitated animals, and part 2 will focus more on the rehabilitation and release of macaques. And we also have a session from the Social Media Animal Cruelty Coalition on why tackling social media animal cruelty content is vital to your organization's advocacy. So just before we start the individual sessions, I wanted to welcome and extend my thanks to all of the dedicated speakers who have volunteered to speak for this event today. We really hope that AfA Connect will offer everyone an opportunity to connect, to learn from each other, and strengthen the movement. So without any more delay, I would like to invite you to make your way to the correct session you wish to attend and have registered to. So if you're attending the CAPC session, you don't need to go anywhere. You can stay here in this main room. But if you're attending the session on rehabilitated animals, please make your way to the breakout room. So simply follow this procedure in the menu. You can find a button that says breakout room. If you don't see this button, then on more, you will be able to see the breakout room option and you can join the room. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy this event and I'll see you later.
Thanks very much, Lauren, and yeah, welcome everyone. Great to see you all here. My name is Craig. I'm a coordinator for the Capacity in Animal Protection Coalition, Asia for Animals, or CAPC as we call it. And I'm delighted to be here with our speakers today, Aniha Patwardhan, Wachaya Paramsan, and Laura Goff. I can't believe that it's been 6 months already since we saw each other in person in Kuala Lumpur, so it's great to be back together with the speakers. The session today, as Lauren pointed out, is called You're Doing Everything Right, Commonly Faced Challenges Around Asia. We put this session together because in our work at Asia for Animals, as Lauren mentioned, we're a network of 300 organizations, so we're always speaking to NGOs who think, oh, maybe the challenges I'm seeing with my intervention or with my operations or the internal culture is unique to our NGO, but we wanted to kind of try and dispel that in this session. So we're going to hear from Aniha on the operations side, from Wich on the intervention side, and from Laura on the culture side. So Laura can't join us in person right now. She's traveling, but she is going to try and join us for the Q&A session. So please pop your questions for the speakers in the chat. My colleagues will pass them to me. If you're joining us on YouTube, you can also pop your questions in the chat there, and I'll read those out when it comes to the session. Let me just quickly introduce each speaker, and then we'll first of all hear from Aniha, then we'll hear from Wich, and then we'll hear from Laura. So Aniha Patwardhan is a non-profit operations consultant with over 15 years of experience in the animal protection space. She helps nonprofits set up, improve, and run their back offices so they can focus on their core missions. Her services include finance, human resources, administration, IT, compliance, and more. Aniha has consulted for several leading organizations of all sizes, from multinational NGOs to small startups, and has saved them thousands of hours and dollars by streamlining their operations departments. Wachaya Paramsan is the Managing Director, Thailand, for Synergia Animal. She's based in Bangkok, Thailand. Before joining Synergia Animal as a campaigns manager in 2019, she had been involved with the animal advocacy on a voluntary basis for over 2 years. She's working with a team in Thailand to secure cage-free commitments from major companies. And as well as that, working with other NGOs and key stakeholders in Southeast Asia to boost the movement regionally. And we'll also hear from Laura Goff. Laura works as a Global Impact Project Manager at Anima International and has over a decade of experience within the animal advocacy movement. She is responsible for movement building and growing Anima International's resource sharing and training programs, which support and develop advocates in neglected regions. Without further ado, I think we can welcome our first speaker, Aniha Patwardhan. So Aniha, the floor is yours if you'd like to share your screen.
Thank you, Craig. All right, thanks everyone for joining us at this event. My name is Aniha, and today I'm going to talk about some commonly faced back office challenges with the operations and admin side of running your nonprofit organizations. And through my consulting work, I've had the opportunity to work with many different organizations, many of them in Asia, and I will be sharing some challenges that I've seen and some solutions that hopefully you can take back with you to your own organizations. So taking a step back and setting some context on why we should care about operations. The main reason is when your back office infrastructure is robust, when your internal processes are strong and running smoothly, it has a ripple effect throughout your organization and all of your programs are successful. So when founders and leaders invest the time in having strong operations, it means we can help even more animals, which is why we are all here today. Another piece of context that I want to share is when I speak about operations, I mean these functional areas: finance, administration, HR, IT, and compliance and governance for the purpose of this session. Today, I am going to focus on these 5 common challenges that I've seen in many nonprofit organizations. Most of these are relevant universally, but some of them are especially relevant for nonprofits in Asia. And even if you're not starting your nonprofit, if you're just starting a new project or a volunteer-led campaign, hopefully these potential solutions will be helpful for you as well. The first challenge that I've commonly seen is time constraints. As founders, you will often wear a lot of different hats and you will find yourself pulled in multiple directions, which can take away your time from the strategic and higher level work that you should be doing. And I'll share some solutions for this. The first one is outsourcing as much as possible, especially things like bookkeeping, payroll, and your charity registrations, legal compliance, and so on. These are all things you should outsource to professional vendors right from the beginning. Secondly, you will notice that there's a lot of busy work to be done in the initial stages, or even if you're established as a nonprofit. So I would encourage you to think about adding some operations support to your team, whether it is an operations employee or an agency who can help you with these tasks. The third one is something that I'm a big fan of. There are many no-code automation tools available in the market, like Zapier, which is very easy to use, and you can connect different software that you use with each other so that it can take away the manual busy work that you do on a day-to-day basis. And finally, most importantly, is effective delegation. A lot of founders, when they start initially, they are the only ones doing everything, and it can be challenging to effectively delegate, but this is a skill I would recommend that you build as early as possible, even if you're managing just one staff member. Another challenge that I've observed a lot is technology gaps. A lot of nonprofits are funding constrained and they hesitate to invest in the proper software and tools that are necessary. It can seem like you're saving money by doing this and by keeping everything in-house, but you're actually spending a lot more in terms of your staff's time. And when you don't use the proper software and tools, it can lead to a lot of complicated mistakes in the long term. So I always recommend an early investment in technology, especially in some of these areas like accounting and payroll. These are not things you should be doing manually in a spreadsheet. Always use professional emails with your organization's domain and keep it separate from your personal communication. Use a password management tool like 1Password from day one for better security. And use a project management system instead of managing all of your activities by email. Lastly, if you engage with a lot of external stakeholders and individual donors, then invest in a CRM tool to manage those relationships. And before you purchase any software or invest in tools, always look for nonprofit discounts. There are free or highly discounted plans available for qualifying nonprofits. Another challenge that I see in nonprofits is a lack of expertise. And this is something that is particularly relevant in Asia because the animal movement is still young and it's not seen as a viable career path. So it can be difficult to find the talent that you need to make your organization successful. So I'll share some solutions both to build the capacity internally and also to source this expertise from outside your organization. The first one is look into professional associations and universities in your country. They often have resources for nonprofits. Explore corporate volunteer programs. Many big companies have programs where they place a highly skilled volunteer in your nonprofit for a short-term basis. There are many capacity building organizations and consultants in our movement offering a wide range of services, everything from legal advice to communications, operations, web development, and so on. So reach out to these entities and individuals to support your organizations. The AFA resource library is another excellent place to find the talent that you need. I have personally found it very helpful. And if you're struggling to fill your roles and find the right talent for your organization, take a look at the Animal Advocacy Careers job board and candidate database. They are proactively working to expand their offerings to Asia. And lastly, there are many free learning resources available for nonprofits. You can reach out to me if you'd like a list. Make sure that you use such resources for professional development internally in your team. Another big challenge that I see, particularly in Asia, is the difficulty around starting and sustaining a nonprofit organization. In some Asian countries, it is fairly straightforward to start a nonprofit, but in many countries, there are strict laws and government regulations that make it difficult not just to start a nonprofit entity, but also to sustain it in the long term by getting foreign funding and so on. So these are some solutions that I've seen many organizations use. First one is to explore alternative structures like fiscal sponsorships, where an established organization acts as your legal and financial back office and you operate as a project under them. Look into whether a for-profit entity is easier to form in your country. Many organizations are incorporated as for-profit companies, but they operate as non-profits on a day-to-day basis. In some countries, it is easier to form a subsidiary instead of starting an organization from scratch. So explore whether that is an option. And see if there are any local partnership opportunities, if there are organizations doing similar work to what you're doing, but they are established and mature. And depending on the nature of your work, it might be possible to form collaborations with the government. If that is an option in your case, it can help you bypass and navigate all of these challenges. And finally, something that I always recommend everyone do is knowledge sharing. It's a lot of work to do this research on the regulations in your country and then brainstorm solutions, but most likely somebody else has been through this process. So I would encourage you to reach out to the community and seek out their recommendations and learnings. And finally, one big challenge I want to share is funding, and specifically funding for admin and overhead. So our movement is already funding constrained. We don't have the kind of resources that the broader nonprofit space has. And on top of that, there is an expectation to minimize funding on overhead, on operations and admin and all of these back office functions. You might have seen this kind of pie chart where all of your spending is depicted as distributed over programs and overhead. And we try to minimize the admin and fundraising slice as much as possible to show that we are spending almost all of the funding on programs and to show that we are effective. However, research has shown that not only is this kind of depiction inaccurate, but it's also not conducive to the organization's longevity and effectiveness in the long term. Because when your foundations are underfunded and suffering, all of your programs are going to suffer as a consequence. So as founders, as leaders in this movement, I would encourage you to do two things. First is allocate the necessary budget for operations and overhead. Don't try to minimize and eliminate it. These are necessary costs for the success of your organizations. And secondly, instead of calling it overhead and trying to eliminate it, let's revision it as core mission support. And built on top of that, you have your direct programmatic expenses. I think this kind of reframing is really important for our movement, and it's important for us to build the strong and robust foundations that we need so as to help as many animals as we can. All right, so that brings me to the end. I will wrap up by saying that it can be overwhelming to navigate all of these challenges, but I want to say that you're not alone in this. There are many of us who have been through this and you're doing everything right. And I would encourage you to reach out to the community, and you're all welcome to reach out to me if there's any way I can support you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Aniha. Some really great points there. And yeah, as Aniha said, you can reach her at anihapatwardan.com for operational support. You can also reach me and my colleagues at asiaforanimals.com for capacity support. Just related to Aniha's last point in the presentation there, want to point out to our audience that on the concept of like making your core, your core fundraising support your missions and changing that narrative. There's another session in Connect taking place tomorrow. That's with Joanne Dunsford of Animals Asia Foundation, who's the Global Director of Fundraising. So to learn more about how you can kind of do as Aniha said and change that narrative, please join the session tomorrow. You can find details at asiaforanimals.com/connect. So I do have some questions for Aniha, but we're going to hold those until the Q&A session. We'll move on now to our next speaker. Wachaya Pat, it's nice to see you again. And yeah, the floor is yours. Witch from Synergia Animal in Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig, for the introduction. And thank you so much, Aniha, for a great presentation. So I'm going to try to share my screen. And Craig, if you see it, could you let me know? Did you see my slide?
Yeah, we see it now. Thank you.
Yeah, and no notes, right? Just these.
No notes. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And so I'm going to start. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share our experience and our stories here. As Craig has introduced, my name is Witch. I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand. And today I will be sharing with you the challenges that we as an organization face working in Thailand and some of the ideas and ways that we have done to tackle these challenges. So I just would like to start with a little brief introduction about Synergia Animal. So we work in 8 countries across 2 regions, Latin America and Southeast Asia. So in Thailand, in Southeast Asia right now, we're working in Thailand and Indonesia. In the majority of the countries we work in, we run pressure campaigns to end cages for egg-laying hens, with the exception of Brazil, where we ask companies to publish animal welfare policies for pigs and cows in the dairy industry. We also conduct investigations to expose the cruel reality inside the factory farms. And to top it off, we also challenge individuals and institutions to shift to a more plant-based and sustainable diet. We are also a part of Stop Funding Factory Farming Coalitions to ask major development banks to stop investing money in factory farming and invest in a more sustainable sustainable industry that are less reliable on animal agriculture. So my hope for the session today is to share some ideas and our plans to deal with some challenges that we have faced. We are not, rather than providing a blueprint or step-by-step action plans for success, I would like to use this space for us to share ideas and our challenges. So when it comes to launch pressure campaigns, there are no one-size-fits-all solutions. So I hope the ideas that I share today will help inspire you to come up with your own that fits your context. Let me first start with a little anecdote. So in February last year, I had to be in Europe for a conference, so I stopped in Amsterdam to organize a protest for RELEASE. RELEASE is a Dutch company that operates a supermarket chain called Super Indo in Indonesia. And at that time, they did not have sufficient cage-free policies for their supermarket chain in Indonesia yet, even though it has a cage-free policy in Europe operations already. So we would like to launch a pressure campaigns for RELEASE so that they extend the cage-free policy to its supermarket chains in Indonesia. So before we organized a protest, we discussed the limitations with a Dutch lawyer. We had so many questions, such as, can we organize a protest as a tourist on a tourist visa? What are the risks of organizing a protest in Amsterdam? What are potential legal consequences? What are specific languages, wording, or messages that we should avoid? And lastly, we asked them if we should drop the ideas of organizing a protest in Amsterdam at all. And the Dutch lawyer we spoke to was very surprised that we had these concerns at all. We had to explain why we are so worried. We explained that we face some lawsuits in Brazil, and in some countries where we operate, we need to notify the authorities before we organize any street actions. So the lawyer was surprised that these things were happening. and confirmed with us that we did not need to worry. The right to protest is protected. So that brings up like the first challenges that has brought up many times, and it has become a hot topic for discussion, at least in Southeast Asia, which is navigating legal waters in launching fresher campaigns. So organizing fresher campaigns in the global south comes with certain legal concerns and restrictions that we have to navigate. In Thailand and Indonesia, for example, we have to be careful of certain details like the languages we use on campaigns materials and the use of logos and trademarks of the companies. So we have decided to refrain using companies' logos and trademarks in our campaigns materials and just use the name of the companies. Also, we in Thailand and Indonesia, we have to notify the authorities of the protest that we are going to organize at least 24 hours in advance in the case of Thailand. And sometimes we run into challenges where like the authorities that we inform do not know how they should proceed with the notification that we give them. So when we first started working in Thailand and Indonesia, it was a little bumpy as we navigate the legal waters. We had to consult with the local lawyer on every minuscule details before we start any campaign activities. So this process made it less agile, and it took longer for us to do certain things. Things got slower, and we had to spend longer times in the preparation process rather than just get things done, go to street and put pressure on companies. But 4 years have passed. We started in Thailand and Indonesia in 2029, so it has been 4 years now. So 4 years have passed, and we have learned a lot by experience. So now we do not have to consult with the local lawyers in every single minuscule details anymore. We have become more agile, and here's how we have come to this stage. So from the beginning, we started to work with a very trustworthy lawyer. For the case of Synergy Animal, we do pressure campaigns, we organize street actions. So we selected a lawyer who has relevant experience. So in Indonesia, we work with a lawyer who works with Greenpeace. And in Thailand, we work with a human rights lawyer who have been helping political activists who do a lot of street protests. So, and when we started, we made sure that we had conversation with each of them, so they understood our vision, mission, and the way we work. So this will depend on the kind of work that you do in your own country. So you might not have to work with Greenpeace lawyer, but we chose to work with Greenpeace lawyer and a lawyer who has experience in human rights, because we know that we are going to do street actions and protests, and this might be a challenge with local law enforcement. But it will depend on the kind of work that you do. So if you're not planning to run a lot of protests, then you might not have to select the kind of lawyer that we have decided to work with. So after that, we compile experiences and legal comments from the lawyer in records and in writing. So whatever we learn from the lawyer, we wrote it down, and then we compile them into a legal manual for campaigning. So when we have specific questions in mind, we check this manual first. After we check this manual, and then we have questions that are not already written down in the manual, then we go to the local lawyer for additional consultants. So this manual has made us more agile and gets things done faster, because we don't have to wait for the comments from the lawyer. But please also keep in mind that even with this legal manual, we still need local lawyer services from time to time for specific activities. So challenge number 2, in working in Thailand and Indonesia, it's mobilizing volunteer base. In the case of Thailand, we face the challenge of mobilizing volunteers who would like to and can come to our protest. In the beginning, we did not have so many people on our team, and one person performed different roles. An example is that we had a campaign manager who was also responsible for engaging with volunteers and invite them to street protests. I was that campaign manager, so apart from organizing a street protest, I was also engaging with volunteers, try to empower them and mobilize them to come to the street protest as well. And I mean, now it is better. Now we have a person who will be dedicated to engaging with volunteers full time in some countries, but the case of having one person working on different roles are still the case in many countries where Synergia Animal operates. For example, Argentina, Chile, and Colombia. But we are planning to have one specific person dedicated to engaging with volunteers when more resources and funding are secure. So what we have done to tackle this challenge and what we're planning to do so far. So we have recognized that volunteer engagement is at the core of our campaign's initiative, and it requires a full-time person to be responsible for this. And that's why we already have a volunteer coordinator in some countries already. And the plan is to have them in all countries when we secure additional resources. So before we establish this volunteer initiative, we have reached out to different organizations with similar program in order to understand their volunteer initiatives and adapted the ideas to our very own unique context. And Animal International is actually one of the organizations that we have spoken to, which you will also hear from Laura from Animal International afterwards. And in the beginning, when we did not have a lot of people, that doesn't mean that we cannot run any protests. We can still do things with the resources and people that we have. So in the beginning, we tend to run protests that we don't need a lot of people. And then we use creative visual materials. So only a few people can make an impact and can attract companies' interest. So finally, the challenge number 3 that we face, by the way, it sounds like there are only 3 challenges that we are facing, but that's not the case. We have many challenges, but with the time limitation, I selected the 3 that I think will be common for other organizations who are also working to end cages in this region. So the challenge number 3 that I would like to speak about is the fact that cages are seen as the norm. So when we launch online advertisements to gather signatures on petitions, we always get mixed reaction from the public. Some support us, some do not, and some would like to support, but then they are still hesitant. So here's the thing, we have to realize that people are not against reducing the suffering for animals. Rarely people will outright say that they support the confinement and the cruel conditions that animals have to endure. And the response from the public usually comes in the form of, yes, but, for example, yes, I feel bad for animals. They should not have to live like this. But what will I do if eggs get more expensive? I do not have that money to pay more. Or it can be like, yes, animals do not deserve to live in this condition, but what are the alternatives? So in the attempt to understand why our campaigns to remove cages in Thailand, do not get as much support like ones in Latin America. We conduct a commission market research called Perceptions about Animal Welfare and Veganism in Thailand. So what we learned is that there are like various factors that can contribute to limited support from the public when it comes to our campaigns to remove cages for egg-laying hens. Low brand awareness of our organization is one of them. From a focus group conversation, and an audience say that they are supportive of our demand, of our acts, of our petition, but they were hesitant to sign the petition because they did not know our organization, they did not know who Synergy Animal is, and they did not know what would happen to their signatures or their names that they provided. Also, another factor that we indicated is that people don't understand what in the cages would mean. They misunderstood that if hens are not kept in cages anymore, they will roam freely and be nuisance to people and contaminate the environment, which is not the case at all, even after we remove cages for hens. So we have some ideas to tackle this challenge. I mean, we have conducted something to tackle this challenge already. So for the short-term solution, we have launched ads with more targeted audience. And we launch ads that target people who have specific interest in animal protection, animal welfare, and people who are already following other animal protection organizations. For example, World Animal Protection or PETA. And with this short-term solution alone, we were able to get 30,000 signatures on a petition with ads targeting. This might not seem like a high number in like other countries, but in Thailand, this is a huge milestone for us, and I was very happy when I saw this amount of signatures. So in the future, we will also invest more time and resources in building brand awareness in Thailand by establish our presence in some plant-based fairs or other relevant events, so people hear more about us, see more about us, and in the long term, our brand awareness in Thailand will be stronger, and people will have more trust when we see our campaigns and less hesitant to join in. And we found that people thought if we remove cages, hens would just roam around freely, which is a misconception. So we will continue to produce educational content to educate people what it means to remove cages and how it will be better for animals and also for people. So final thoughts. Despite the challenges we face since we started, we have secured 162 cage-free and crate-free commitments in 8 countries that we operated. So sometimes it might feel like very little has changed and it can be disheartening, but we have gotten this movement off the ground. The hardest part, I think, is to start. So remember that we have done the most important and hardest thing already. Now we just have to keep going. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope I did not go over time, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Witch, and special thanks to that last thought on the last slide there. Like really great to see what Synergia has achieved in Thailand in spite of it feeling like a kind of rocky road sometimes. So thanks for sharing that. Again, I do have questions for Witch, but we're going to hold them to the QA session till the end. We're just about to hear from Laura Goff from Anima International, and my colleague is going to share the video recording of her presentation because Laura can't join us right now. She's traveling. We hope she's going to be able to join us for the QA session. But yeah, Lauren, if you're ready with Laura's video, then we'd love to hear that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm just gonna share my screen. So thank you for the introduction. And also to the organizers, Craig and Pavitra, for putting this together. It's a great event and very important and necessary. So yeah, as mentioned, my name is Laura. I work at Anima International at our global impact team, focusing on movement capacity buildings in neglected regions. And today I'm going to cover 3 ways to master and celebrate your mistakes. I want to cover imposter syndrome, hidden power of mistakes, avoiding embracing them, 3 ways to master and celebrate, and of course, share some examples and resources. Just to highlight, I'm no expert. I am covering this topic based on my own experience. There is no medical or professional expert advice given on imposter syndrome. And of course, do always seek for professional help if dealing with any physical or mental health issue. So if you're not sure what I'm referring to, imposter syndrome is mainly a psychological experience or feeling that you're tricking people into believing something that you're not. Even though you have the skills or the expertise, you feel that you've only achieved this because of external factors or luck. And I'm not sure if you relate. This always can show up in work relationships or friendships, and it's very frustrating because it affects and holds back your self-confidence. One of the definitions of imposter syndrome is that you're constantly experiencing self-doubt, even when in areas you typically excel. You might feel nervous, which is accompanied by the belief that you'll be found out, and it may also manifest as negative self-talk. On the outside, there's no apparent reason for you to feel like an imposter, and yet you still do. And this makes it very challenging. And of course, it reduces your self-confidence. So why is this a problem? Because it basically blurs your self-worth. So it can also affect how you approach projects and relationships and making you feel very insecure. And also it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I believe I can't really do this, so I don't really try. And then I kind of do it in a specific way. And then I prove myself that I wasn't able to do it. And it just goes on. And instead of like kind of reducing it to the understanding that you are able to do it and you have the skills. Some of the questions that can be asked to understand if you might fall into having imposter syndrome or you've actually had it is, do you suffer over the smallest mistakes? Do you attribute your success to luck or other outside factors? Are you sensitive to even very constructive criticism? Do you feel like you will inevitably be found out as fake? And do you downplay your expertise even though in areas where you generally have, you're generally skilled? And if you've answered yes or maybe to some of these questions, don't worry, because actually imposter syndrome is to be shown that an estimated 70% of the population can experience this or will experience this. And it's actually higher percentage in women. I'm happy to link the sources of these studies. And the most important part is, okay, so how do we move on from here? So if you're self-doubting or you believe you don't have the skills or the expertise, even though you do, how to get past imposter syndrome. So what helped with me, and helped a lot, was asking myself some core questions or important questions, which is, what core beliefs do I hold about myself? Must I be perfect for others to approve of me? And how open am I sharing these thoughts with other people and being vulnerable? I mainly feel vulnerable about my mistakes. And this is very key. And this is very important, because allowing yourself to make mistakes and allowing yourself to speak about them and recognize them, not beat yourself over it, is one of the ways of moving forward to then being able to reduce this imposter syndrome. And again, but why is this important? And it's important to share mistakes and be vulnerable, because there is a hidden power here. I imagine that no one here has never not made a mistake. We're all, it's part of living, it's part of a hectic lives, it's part of growing, it's part of learning, and that is fine. And usually you even can admit it, right? That you sometimes tolerate that other people make mistakes, but you don't tolerate yourself. And you have to, because no one escapes making mistakes despite our preferences for perfection. Admitting them is key. So why is this important? And admitting these mistakes is key, apart from being open and vulnerable. It's because it's connected to intellectual humility. Intellectual humility is important because it leads not only to better leadership, which has been shown and viewed that people who openly demonstrate the willingness to share their mistakes are viewed more positively. And when we're humble to our teams and we're humble to our peers, information is more effectively shared, and we can become more creative. Being more creative leads to better performance, which then, of course, understands that we are being perceived as humble and we can perform better, we feel more comfortable. And by feeling more comfortable, we then are able to build better communities. And most likely, we are more open to help others and show support for members of our communities. And actually studies show, although I think it's quite intuitive, that you're less judgmental towards others and more likely to understand where they're coming from and their changes and be more open-minded. And most importantly is that we are better at making decisions. And this has been shown that we are actually better at evaluating evidence and accurately discerning whether arguments are properly factual or not. I'm sharing here also a quote from Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist. He has a podcast. I'm not sure if you know. I would highly recommend listening to him. But he covers basically that when scientific findings suggest that setting the level of challenge to one where you make errors up to 15% of the time is ideal for learning. So there's plenty of evidence and plenty of studies that show that it's important to be open and vulnerable and to sharing our mistakes, and that improves our performance and creates better communities and has better consequences for our decisions. So maybe if you were doubting at the beginning about should I be avoiding or embracing mistakes, hopefully the answer now is very clear. And again, no one escapes making mistakes despite our preferences for perfection. Admitting them is key. And I wanted to share a really good example that I read on The Power of Habits, which is a highly recommended book. I am sharing it at the end with my resources, is from NASA. Basically, they build rockets, and making mistakes there is huge. And for me, it was surprising to read that sometimes when they're having a launch and everyone's sitting down in the office looking towards the rockets, and it's going to be launched, and for some reason burns, it crashes, or it just doesn't work out, people, instead of punishing themselves or just getting angry, they all stand up and they start clapping. And this is a signal to celebrate the mistake, because even though something has happened or something went wrong, they have been able to learn. Someone has put the effort, the energy, the capability, and has been open to put something together in order to see if it's going to work or not. And this increases, as mentioned before, also the psychological safety, because it allows people to make mistakes. And I always thought, well, if NASA can do that, I think it puts very much into perspective a lot of the work we do. And based on this, I actually wanted to ask a few questions, which I think are important. You don't have to answer them now, but I think it's good to cover. Like, how do you currently celebrate your mistakes? Are you open about them? Are your team members or leadership open about it? And do you punish them or do you celebrate them? And being mindful of the time, I want to jump into the 3 ways which you can embrace and celebrate and master these mistakes. Is first of all, integrating a good culture. So I don't know if you know Ray Dalio. I highly recommend his book on principles. He has also a ton of information online. Create a culture in which it is okay to make mistakes and unacceptable not to learn from them. This is essential, and it will, of course, be work in progress. Integrating culture is one of the hardest things you will ever do, but it's very, very important. And you need to define very clearly your values and who you are as an organization or as a team. And especially this will be key in times of crisis, because the better culture and the better defined values that you have, the easier it will be to pull out of a crisis. One of the main things to incorporate, actually, good culture, which has been key in Anima International, and we push a lot, is psychological safety. I'm not sure if you have heard of the term before. Some people think psychological safety, it makes sense, but it's actually very hard to integrate because a lot of people understand it, but doesn't necessarily feeling, because psychological safety is a belief. It's a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. In teams, it refers to team members believing that they can risk without being shamed by other team members. In psychological safety teams, team members feel accepted and respected, contributing to do and have a better experience at the workplace, their projects, etc. This is very important to include. Amy Edmondson, who coined the term, has also really good books and understanding of why psychological safety has been key to create vulnerability and better teams. And actually, not only it helps to share mistakes, it also helps to prevent big mistakes, because you're more inclined to share the little things that happen on a day-to-day. I also would say that the second important part after integrating a good culture is creating a plan and implementing it. What does this mean? Have elements in your daily or weekly meetings or in your daily or weekly tasks where you can be open and vulnerable and speak about your failures. So an example is that at Anima International, on every team call on our agenda, one point of the agenda is to share your weekly mistakes or to share the mistakes that you've had that week or since the last call. This is important because it creates this dynamic and it operationalizes this element, which is key to share, because sometimes it's easy to say that you're going to do it, but if you actually have a point on the agenda, which is to share, we do so more actively. And sometimes it can be something minor, like, oh, I forgot to post an update, or I forgot to send an email. But other times are bigger mistakes, which actually the team benefits a lot from and we can learn from. Here also, we can start to see if psychological safety is being built, because the more open people are to sharing specific mistakes and more mistakes, you can then start to understand if psychological safety is being built and implemented. And the third, last but not least, I wanted to point out, focus on the lessons learned. So track and follow mainly. So as an example of one of the tools that we do, we actually have a spreadsheet where we write down a short description, a date, and the name of the person who has made the mistake. So for example, Laura, I forgot to send an email this date. So sometimes they're minor mistakes, sometimes they're bigger mistakes. This was taken from one of Ray Dalio's ideas and toolkits. And it's great because you can start seeing patterns and you can start understanding and checking what is failing. So let's say that I'm always late or for sending out emails, there's definitely a pattern there. So you start have to asking the reasons why behind it and probably being able to learn and correct from it. So another good tool I mentioned with the why is the 5 whys game. So 5 whys means that it ensures the team to really address the aspect connected to the actual mistake. It's a very simple, you just ask why something happened and then ask why that happened in that case, and so on until you get to 5 whys. This basically allows to dig deeper into the reason. So, okay, why did you send the email late? Oh, because I didn't have time. Why didn't you have time? Because I didn't organize my task correctly. Why didn't you organize the task correctly? Because I have poor time management, or the tools that I'm using too many tools. Why are you using too many tools? Maybe I should only use one tool to focus on my schedule or to understand how to build my day better. So this deep kind of understanding of going through why these mistakes have been made can then actually put the focus on the key issue or the baseline in order for you to learn and correct. So I don't have much time, so I wanted to share some of our mistakes because I can't make a presentation about being vulnerable and share mistakes without doing so myself. So the first example is mainly why we shut down the live fish sales campaign. So we had this campaign where we were trying to buy live fish shells from several supermarkets in Poland and in other countries. And then we understand, just to give some context, that what we were doing was actually shifting consumers to buying more salmon, which requires even higher levels of fish feed, which then can basically lead to higher levels of suffering. The mistake here was that we didn't check the data properly and we didn't follow up on the impacts of the campaign. And this was actually done by a volunteer who was working on the campaign and started looking into the data and realized that this could actually make more harm than not. So what we do to celebrate it? We actually wrote a blog post about it. We also posted in the EA forum to share our mistake and also to learn from other people and kind of get some feedback. And this has been a key element for us to understanding like how to actually interpret data and how to look and how to try to understand our impact. Another one is hiring and firing processes. Well, one of the main things is that hiring people and hiring process are tricky, but they were also being extremely long. In some cases, they were up to 6 months, and which is a lot. And it's got less and it's getting better. And here we were trying to understand that the mistake was we had very high expectations, we had very poor time management and very low capacity. So what we did here is we tried to improve the focus on actually hiring people to do operations and people to actually do the hires to then handle this tedious process. And it has worked, and in specific organizations, it's getting better. And within Anima International now we actually have a team that can actually handle the hiring process, which is it's still long, but we're getting there, and we're actually getting a lot of feedback that we're implementing. And with firing, I think this is a huge mistake. I think that a lot of us go through is having difficulties to process the part of actually letting people go. However, even though it's good for the team or the organization in the long term. And basically here, what we need to refocus is that we are looking for the perfect match. And it doesn't mean less or more from the person or the organization if they're not a good fit. It's just, in this case, it's important to understand that you're looking for a specific individual, or you're looking for specific values and skills in someone. And sometimes it doesn't match, and it doesn't mean it's a good or a bad thing. It's just not a good fit. So finishing up the talk, yeah, I just want to say that it's important to be very reflective and humble and putting your ego aside, and it's an important element for our daily lives. We can actually improve this, and we can train, and we can implement specific tools in order to become better advocates. And the most important thing for me, it's always remember why you want to do better. And it's about always trying to win this fight to end animal suffering. So here are some of the resources that I mentioned. These are 5 different books. You have the authors, which I would highly recommend to Google and to check online. They have a ton of information online, and most of it is for free. If I have to pick 1 or 2 or 3, it's hard. I would have put 20 up here, but I put 5. But I think you can start with The Fearless Organization. I think it's really, really good book. Amy has some great content, and The Culture Code I would also highly recommend. Contact details are there. Thank you for listening, and I'm always open to answer any questions, and please always feel free to reach out. Thank you very, very much.
Great, thanks so much to Laura for her presentation, and I'm happy to say that I think Laura has been able to join us here for the Q&A, which is great. Laura spoke, we touched a little bit on imposter syndrome in our session in Kuala Lumpur back at Asia Farm Animal Day in 2023, so it was nice to be able to continue that conversation here. We've got about 15 minutes now for Q&A, and I'm glad to see some questions coming in, so please remember to add your questions to the chat and I'll pass them on. I'm going to start here with a question for Aniha, and this is kind of about like the common theme in the 3 presentations that we've seen today is about the investment of time, right? It's like you need to invest the time in operations to get it right. You need to invest the time in your people and culture. And you need to invest the time in, as Witch said, like your brand awareness, so that your interventions will be effective. So, Aniha, on the operations side, how do you convince your team or organizations that you work with that investing time and resources into operations is worthwhile? It can be hard for people to see this when they are drawn to campaigning or activism. Thanks.
Thanks, Craig. I normally share case studies with my work with several nonprofit organizations, and the numbers are all there. The organizations that invest a proper amount of funding and time on operations and back office functions like HR and finance are more robust, and they tend to have more effective campaigns. So it's all a matter of communicating with the leadership and the board and sharing previous success stories.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great tactic, you know, and I guess as well, like we can also show kind of narratives from other more developed movements, like the kind of the environmental movement or human rights or whatnot as well. So thanks for that. Moving on to a question for Witch, someone in the audience, Witch, on the topic of what you said about raising the awareness of Synergy as brand, would you mind sharing one typical example of raising awareness through media campaigns? I do see a lot of difficulty in getting people to understand and support our works.
Thank you so much. So I think one thing we're planning to do is we are going to organize a kind of like gathering for organizations, animal protection organizations who also like not fund animal protection organizations, but companion animals and people who work to protect wild animals as well. So like for us to just gather, exchange stories about our work and just get to know each other. So that's one thing that we're planning to do. And we are going to make more effort in having our presence in plant-based events in order to explain our mission, vision, and values to people who are attending the plant-based events. So like we have to understand that this is more kind of like a long-term approaches. We cannot expect that when we do this thing one time and one thing, it will magically dispel the misconception and that we will immediately gain overwhelming support from the public just by doing this one thing. I think it's more like an ongoing process that we have to continue and then learn if it works or not. If it works, if it doesn't work very well, then we adapt and then we do other things. We have any more follow-up questions? Do you think it was clear?
Yeah, it was very clear, thanks. And I like this idea about like appearing at plant-based events and whatnot. So to the person's question about raising profile in the media, and on the topic of this session today, which is about commonly faced challenges, I can think of a group also working in the Philippines who are like organizing the kinds of events that they think will be like attractive for the media to come to. So it might not always be about cage-free, it might be about plant-based, it might, you know, which is a kind of hot topic around the world at the moment. So thanks for that. We've got a question now for Laura. Laura, I'm not sure if we've tested.
I am.
Oh,
Here.
yeah. So your audio is here. Great, fantastic. Yeah, the person is asking, so how do you start a process on sharing mistakes? Because presumably some people may feel uncomfortable or feel ashamed at sharing their mistakes at first.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the key element of trying to be vulnerable and sharing these mistakes, right? And I would probably move first to people which we would consider like the co-founders or team leaders or leadership in general. I think once you have this kind of step forward, which has been shown in many studies, where you see people that you have kind of a higher praise for because, I don't know, they started the organization or they have more experience or you believe they have more skills, and they're the ones who are sharing these mistakes, and you're like, okay, so we can't be perfect, and even people that I think that have more experience or skills than I do also make mistakes. I think it starts creating this baseline in which you can see that it's okay. And also what is very important, and although it's hard as the first few steps, is that there's no kind of punishment behind it. There's actually praise, right? So again, like that you don't get absolutely, how would say, like, I mean, the word would be punished, but like that you don't get really bad feedback, or that you don't get absolutely critical feedback in the sense of saying that, oh, this should never happen again, and so on and so on. It's more about being comfortable trying to share these mistakes. Of course, there's mistakes and mistakes, and some things are worse than others. But I think from a starting point or a starting stage, especially if you're starting a team or organization, big mistakes are going to happen because most of the time we don't know what we're doing. And I think that's the more open we are about being able to understand that we're not perfect and we're trying our best, is more valuable in the long term, even though in the short term it's very hard for us. And I would say that we've made that mistake as well. We've made the mistake of not sharing mistakes and trying to pretend that everything is fine, and it has been detrimental for the team and the organization. So yeah, in general, I would say, like, just try to look at people that's, as mentioned, the team leaders or co-founders, to start this process, so everyone else can start feeling a bit more comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like there's two parts. Like the people in leadership positions need to communicate that there's that psychological safety that you mentioned in your presentation, so that there's no fear surrounding it. And the second thing is that the more you share your mistakes, the more you will learn from them. So you'll actually begin to think of it as a positive. Thanks
Correct,
for that. Yeah, moving back to a question for Aniha. So this question is typed in two parts, so I'll do my best to read it out and to summarize. So given that most opportunities within the existing animal advocacy space in the global south lean towards contracting arrangements, is it more strategic to prioritize a contractor where individuals are employed on a 3-month basis and look for other contractors for every project, rather than build a more sustainable workforce for a long-term job?
That's a great question. I think it largely depends on your future plans and your plans for scaling your projects and your organization. If your plan in the long term is to grow your organization and run programs for multiple years, then you should look into building your team geared towards that goal. If you are hoping to run a short-term campaign or research project or something similar, then it might make sense to look into contractors that would support you for a short-term basis. I should mention that it's important to look into the legal aspects of employing contractors. Many organizations, they tend to misclassify contractors and employees, and it can have very high penalties for your organization. So make sure that you consult a lawyer or an HR professional before you make these decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Important advice. And as you say, high penalties if you get it wrong. So worth knowing about that before you begin. Thanks very much, Aniha. Coming back now to Witch with another question. It says, I love the idea of creating a legal manual, like you mentioned, in collaboration with a local lawyer. Some advocates may be interested in doing this for their country, but worried about the cost of legal advice. Did you have any experience with getting pro bono legal advice or anything like this?
Thank you so much for the question. We do not have experience getting a pro bono. We pay for, pay for the lawyer. With this legal manual, we work internally. We have a legal and compliance director, who is the main responsible person to compile this legal manual. And of course, this director works with local lawyer in the countries where we would like to compile this legal manual, and then we pay for the service. So we do not have pro bono experience to share. What I can say is that what I have noticed is that like it can be more cost effective to invest in just one-time legal manual rather than pay for the legal fees every time we go to the lawyer. So it might be expensive to pay one time to compile this legal manual, but when we think about it, the cost might accumulate, and we might end up paying more if we keep going back to the lawyer before we would like to conduct any campaigns activities every time. So yeah, that's what I can share. I think we can try looking for pro bono lawyers first. I'm sure there will be lawyers who are very generous and who would like to help animal advocates to reduce the legal risk. So yeah, I will encourage you to try.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to this point that's been made many times in this session, is like the upfront investment pays off in the future, or it's cost saving in the future. And I like your idea about recording everything that comes out of the conversation with the lawyer to begin with, because then it forms a manual you can refer back to later, which is cost saving. And I can think of one or two advocates in the audience today who are coming from the kind of legal advocacy space. Maybe there's something in that, a takeaway from the session. We should develop a database of potential pro bono solicitors, lawyers in each country that NGOs can refer to that are sympathetic to our cause. So yeah, maybe that's something we can look at. Coming back to a question for Laura. So is your advice on overcoming imposter syndrome most valuable to those in decision-making, leadership, or strategizing roles? Or do you have any experience with sharing this with other teams? For example, even in core functions, do you see imposter syndrome, like in the operations functions, for example?
Yeah, I absolutely would say to understand that this could happen to anyone in any team. Mainly even with operations where they might feel oh, our work is maybe not as important or not as valuable as someone that's strategizing for a campaign, even though this is the core process, because without operations or without a team like this, the organization could not actually function. So yeah, I would highlight it, that anyone who feels that that they're feeling that they're not good enough, or that even though they have many skills or experience, what they're doing on their work might not be valuable, and this is why they might kind of focus on trying to belittle themselves. I would kind of make sure that everyone understands that their work is very important, that everyone understands that their input is important, and no matter what team you're coming from. And this is why I think these there shouldn't be clear divisions, even though there's different types of ownership and different types of people making decisions. You should function as an organization that is kind of all one piece, even though you have different kind of machineries in it, right? So it all runs at the same time, it all goes at the same time, and that every element is as important, no matter what team they're from. So yeah.
Great, thanks. We have 1 more minute left for the Q&A session before we take a break. So I'm going to end with a related question also for Laura. Have you come across a situation where maybe more junior staff want to implement a culture such as what you mentioned, but the senior staff don't have the interest, or they don't have the time to think about it? If so, how could a staff member influence up?
Yeah, this is an excellent question, because it has happened, and I think it happens a lot. I mean, it's hard to say, but basically you need to sit down and try to understand what elements, like, first of all, why do you want to change this culture, or why do you think that the specific values or the current values in your organization are not working, and kind of raise these questions. And if you're able to sit down and understand like why you want to do these changes, or why do you believe that what's currently being done is not working. There are really tough conversations and the really hard conversations. Culture is one of the hardest things, not only to implement, but also to continue. It's an ongoing process. It's like communication within the organization. It's not something that you can suddenly fix. It's an ongoing process, especially when you start scaling up. So you need to kind of sit down and start asking the hard questions, and like, what is not working, what values or what type of culture you want to become, and why. And then from there on, try to sit down and have a compelling kind of argument of where do you think you are currently in the team or the organization, and where you want to go. And if the ultimate goal, as we all know, is to end animal suffering. So is this going to be valuable to the end goal? And if this is going to help animals at the end of the day. Like, there's no perfect culture. There's no, like, I can't give you a list of specific values or culture that you should implement, but there is certain things that could be more beneficial, and trying to understand that if this, again, the end goal is to end animal suffering, is where we're going to get to. Yeah, you're going to have these tough conversations. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hopefully if anyone is coming from junior staff positions watching this session and is thinking of that, then best of luck to them with your advice. So we'll close here. I'll end by thanking again Witch, Aniha and Laura for great sessions. Thanks to everyone who tuned in on YouTube. My colleague's going to share a screen, and we're going to just take you through a few things we want to mention. So coming up next, in this room, we've got a session on why tackling animal cruelty on social media is vital to your organization's advocacy. I also want to mention that these Connect sessions are taking place again in June, August, and November. As you see on the screen here, you can learn everything you want to know about that at asiaforanimals.com/connect. And we also have some in-person events coming up this year. So we will be reconvening again for Asia Farm Animal Day, this time in Hanoi. That's on 9th to 11th of October. And our Farm Animal Coalition also has regional events coming up in Philippines and India with the dates TBC. If you want to keep abreast of our events, you can see the URL there, and you can also hear about our events and everything else that Asia for Animals is doing by signing up to our mailing list. You also see the URL there. And for anyone who wasn't aware, we also recently launched a podcast. So conversations just like the one we've just had that are designed to be helpful to your advocacy and kind of bring in expert advice from all around our network is available on asiaforanimals.com/podcast, and you can subscribe on all your favorite channels there. And with that, yeah, again, I'll just say a massive thanks to our speakers and thanks to the audience for being here. Please stay with us for the rest of the sessions. And we've also got 2 breakout rooms. You could join the track on release of wild captured animals in the breakout room. Until then, we're just going to take a 5-minute coffee break. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you in 5 minutes.
Thank you, Craig, Aniha, Rich and Laura for such an insightful session. As Craig just said, we're going to have now a 5-minute session, and then we're going to continue with our program of the AfA Connect with the Social Media Animal Cruelty Coalition's session next. See you in a bit. Everyone, and welcome back to AfA Connect. We're now going to hear the Social Media Animal Cruelty Coalition's session on why tackling animal cruelty content is vital to your organization's advocacy. Just before we start the session, just a reminder for anyone in the room that if you are here to attend the Macaque Coalition and Sanctuaries and Rescue Centers Coalition session on the rehabilitation of macaques, please make your way to the breakout room by clicking on the menu bar at the bottom of your screen, where you can join that breakout room. Amanda, over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. Yes. Okay. Okay, thank you and hello everyone. Thank you for joining our online session as part of the AfA CONNECT event series. We are here for a panel discussion led by the Social Media Animal Cruelty Coalition, or SMAC, part of ACA for Animals. SMAC is working hard to tackle the growing problem of online animal cruelty content. Your presence is important as we discuss and address this issue together. This is our 21-member organization that share the same goal to see animal cruelty content prohibited on social media. Next, please. Okay, today our panel will share with you why it is crucial that all animal advocacy and protection organizations are aware of this issue, how it impacts your wider work for animals, and why we all need to work together to bring change. Sorry, Nicola, you share the wrong window. Okay.
Apologies, one second.
Sorry, everyone. Yeah. It happens. Please wait a second. Anyone ready to share the screen?
Sorry, I am on it. Sorry, I am disappeared now.
No worries. Please wait for a moment. Okay, and we are on it again. We are on the third slides, Nicola. Yeah. Okay, so in this session, we will begin with a 40-minute presentation, followed by 30 minutes for discussion and questions. As this is a complex issue, we'll be just covering the fundamentals today. And if you want to further engagement, you want to collaborate, SMAC is open to discussion with any organization. So please feel free to reach out. Additionally, please note that there will be a short survey at the end of this session. Yeah, this is the survey. So please scan the barcode or type the link to access the survey. It will only take 2 minutes and you are welcome to fill it out during our ongoing discussion. Next, please. So a quick heads up. So because we are talking about animal cruelty, so there will be some tough topics with possibly disturbing images. So be mindful as we go through them. So before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Amanda Faradiva, and I will be your moderator for today. I am a coordinator, SMAC, which is Nicola, our lead coordinator, and Vinaya, our other SMAC coordinator. We also have with us today representative from 2 SMAC member organizations, which is Anbu Bopal, joins us from ACRES in Singapore with over 15 years of experience in wildlife rescues and animal protection issues. She is ACRES co-CEO, overseeing the education, fundraising, animal crime investigation, and the wildlife management. ACRES works closely with online platforms such as TikTok, Meta, and on the removal of content related to illegal wildlife trade and cruelty to animals. They've also published a report online on illegal wildlife trade, highlighting concern on platforms like Telegrams in Singapore. And then the next one is Connie Chiang. She is the co-founder and executive director from Taiwan SPCA. The organization was founded in 2009 and works to help animals through cruelty investigation, animal welfare education, research lobbying, and animal rehoming. Taiwan SPCA joined SMAC after receiving several reports of online cruelty from members of the public in Taiwan and realizing its scope as a global issue and the difficulties towards tackling the problem. So please feel free to ask any question that's come to mind and type them in the chat box. We will have the discussion after the session. So for the first session, I would like to pass the floor to Vinaya.
Hi, everyone. So nice to have y'all here. So I will be talking you through what online animal cruelty is. Before we go any further, I would like to start the session off with a question. So have you ever come across animal cruelty content on social media? Please give your answer in the chat box. Just a short answer, yes or no would do. Of course, there's gonna be a lot of people here who have noticed online animal cruelty. And that's great. That means that you are aware of what online animal cruelty is. So I can see that the majority of our attendees have witnessed animal cruelty content. Identifying what is considered to be cruelty might be difficult for each one of us. There are cruelty contents that are very much obvious, but there are certain things that might look harmless. It's not rare to have people who are working for animal protection organizations still feeling confused in identifying such contents. Even I sometimes feel the challenge, especially when it comes to content that is not publicly acknowledged as cruelty, but it actually can be detrimental to the animals. So let's continue with our discussion. What exactly is animal cruelty? So SMAC defines cruelty as a range of human behaviors performed intentionally or unintentionally that cause animals harm or suffering, which may be immediate or long-term, physical or psychological. And this definition stresses out that suffering, despite being intentionally or unintentionally done, can have an impact in different moments in time. It does not always occur immediately. It can also be long-term impact at worst. And it can also be physical, not just psychological, or both at the same time. And all of these possibilities are just equally damaging. So what is animal cruelty content? How is this similar or different to the animal cruelty that is not posted online? Animal cruelty content is anything that has been posted on a social media platform by an individual, organization, or business that depicts animal cruelty or suffering for any reason, apart from campaigning, journalistic, or educational purposes. So animal cruelty content has no discernible, meaningful purpose, and we consider it to be a barbaric form of entertainment. And as you can see here, there is a wide range of species that are featured in online cruelty content. And you can see wild animals here in captive or free-ranging settings. And all of these here are considered to be animal cruelty content. These pictures show a moment in time where animals are involved in interactions that can lead to detrimental impact. For some of us, they all seem to be obvious cruelty contents, but this is not the case in general. The lion cub pet in a car, the slow lorries pets with diapers, they do not show any form of direct cruelty that general viewers can see. Much of this content is extremely popular online, and even animal lovers and well-meaning people engage and share this type of content. As to them, this is not cruelty, it's rather the opposite. And the collage is just a very small portion of what we have seen. It's impossible to put a final figure on the amount of content out there, but what we do know is that contents like these have a worldwide reach and are viewed billions of times by social media users. And as you may be aware, SMAC annually produces Spotlight Report, a thorough analysis of the data gathered by the SMAC's volunteers in order to gain helpful insight on what is going on about animal cruelty in social media platforms. The production and the result of these reports has also helped SMAC in identifying different types of themes that are frequently seen in the social media platforms. So here are some examples of just some of the types of cruelty content that we have on social media. First, we have wild animals as pets, the inappropriate keeping and or handling of wild animals as pets, which is detrimental to their welfare. The inherent cruelty is usually not intentional or recognized. So why is this problematic? First, several studies concluded that wild animals as pets content invites users to engage with similar action, and that is to keep wildlife as pets. And comments signifying the user's intention to keep wildlife as pets and any type of positive reaction towards the content were used as an indicator of this indirect invitation. Wildlife is an undomesticated species, and it's not made or have evolved to adapt to domestic life. And what the public may fail to understand is the fact that a process of domestication takes years, and it does not directly happen instantly to a wild animal that is kept as pet. It endangers not only the animal, but also the owner. So contents like this may not be a type of obvious cruelty content for users, but it definitely can lead to more horrifying and obvious cruelty that we will cover here. Primates as pets and extreme abuse. Primates used as entertainers, often treated like human children and trained to behave in certain ways, sometimes includes extreme abuse and torture. A review about human-animal relationship and animal hoarding had indicated that humans are more inclined to have positive affection, attachment, and caregiving behaviors to animals that are phylogenetically closer to them. Primates are in fact animals that fit into the closely related to humans description. The similarity to us humans has become a persona that intrigues people to have empathy, but at the same time, it is the same persona that attracts people to have them as pets. This is just one of many possible reasons that are studied of why primates as pets is a popular and a global trend, which has leads to abuse in many forms just for the sake of entertainment. Fake rescue, animals put into distressing situations for the sake of a fake rescue narrative. This might be one of the most challenging type of cruelty to spot by general audience, as the term rescue has a positive connotation. We currently do not have as many information as the other type of contents, but we have learned quite a lot of indicators that signals how the rescues are staged from multiple similar contents of rescue with similar animals and similar looking setting, and an unlikely scenario of predator animal attacking offsprings to accounts using rescuer as a label but have put fake address in the information. Next, please. Teasing as torture, withholding food, attention deprivation, scaring with masks or other animals, spraying with water or other liquids, restrictive clothing, cocaine, etc. So this might be one of the type of cruelty content that social media users actually like seeing due to animals' response towards the teasing. It may seem harmless, but this can go out of hand in a matter of seconds. Teasing as torture certainly has a very broad spectrum, which makes it harder to have a unified agreement on where the line starts and where it ends. What we can definitely agree on is teasing content is uploaded for entertainment, which maybe many of us, including myself, unfortunately, are guilty of enjoying some of the contents that are less obvious. Next, please. Psychological abuse, intentional psychological torture, or torment. It often comes with inflicted physical harm. It may be experienced by animals without any physical trigger as well. But just like as humans, animals can experience trauma. And oftentimes people tend to undermine the cognitive abilities of animals and being receptive to bad incidents when in fact these bad incidents might have a prolonged impact to them. It's something that can be seen by observing, but not all humans are receptive to the animal's body language when they are not comfortable. And the way to identify this abuse may be subjective to everyone, and the capacity of how animals perceive bad experience may vary for each individual and species. But despite how varying these factors are, the smallest portion of abuse is still considered to be an abuse. Next, please. So online animal cruelty truly is a global problem. In response to this, we need a global solution that unites as many people, organizations, and of course, platforms as possible to play their parts. Combating animal cruelty has never been easy, and the exposure of the online world does not make it any easier. SMAC understand that this is a long fight of changing people's action, behavior, intention, and overall mindset. And of course, we need everyone to be hand in hand to achieve this. So it is within our greatest hope that when you walk away today from this session, you will see a way that your organization can be a part of this. I will pass this to Connie.
Okay, thank you, Wanaya. So I'm sure a lot of you may be thinking, well, what are these social media platforms doing about this problem? Well, that is a good question. Next slide. Well, to be frank, just not enough. It's very frustrating how social media companies continue to lag far behind animal welfare science when it comes to appropriately regulating animal cruelty content on their platforms. Although many of the biggest platforms do have some policies related to harm against animals, however, they largely focus only on direct physical abuse, which also has to be clearly visible in the video. So this means that an animal showing injuries or fear responses or in poor conditions may not always fall into the physical harm category. And in addition, the policies tend to be very limited in their scope and do not clearly define what is meant by animal cruelty. So other crucial considerations such as long-term psychological harm or unintentional abuses would not be covered. And when we do reach out to the companies, oftentimes the response is confusing and sometimes even contradictory to their own policies. And reporting options for some platforms don't even allow you to choose animal cruelty as an option. So all in all, we can say that enforcement is quite poor at the moment. Next, to give some examples, SMAC has documented multiple accounts and groups on Facebook sharing monkey torture content. Now, despite this content showing some of the very most extreme forms of violence, abuse, and killing of macaques, they have not been removed by Meta. Meta owns Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. So they did not remove the content until after direct escalation from SMAC, right, which is not acceptable at all. Next slide. So some platforms, including YouTube and Meta, took a positive step to introduce specific policies prohibiting fake animal rescue content. And implementation of these policies appears to have reduced certain forms of fake animal rescue on the platforms, which usually depict animals being attacked by predator species. But SMAC has found that content creators have now developed new forms of fake rescue content in order to evade detection and moderation. So now a lot of the content are showing animals who apparently need medical treatment, but the harm was probably caused by these creators themselves. So this is a perfect example of why policies need to be updated regularly and need to be continuously refined. Next slide. And furthermore, some platforms have implemented restrictions on the sale of endangered species or the sale of live animals, for example, on Facebook. Although it's not the main focus for SMAC, there is the obvious connection and crossover between wildlife trade, animal welfare, and the presence of these animals on social media, either for sale or displayed as pets. And it is, again, frustrating to see that such policies do not protect these endangered species in other ways. So to give an example, Facebook doesn't allow the sale of endangered long-tailed macaques. But then on the other hand, the depiction of long-tailed macaques as pets or dressed in human clothing is not prohibited, even when the animals have obviously been sold as pets, and in some cases, probably even via Facebook itself or WhatsApp, which is also owned by Meta. So in summary, if the content does not show the actual sale of the animals, it would not be covered by Meta's wildlife trade policies. Next slide. Okay, so what is even more upsetting is that many of the creators who post these regular animal cruelty content are actually being paid money by some of the platforms. Now, this is done through advertising on the platforms where ads are placed over popular content, popular videos, earning money for both the creator and the platforms. There is a list of criteria for being eligible for advertising, but sadly, we see animal cruelty content clearly still getting through. A report that was done by SMAC coalition member Lady Freethinker estimated that for 2,000 videos showing animal abuse could earn up to $15 million from monetization for the content creators who post them, and up to $12 million in advertising revenue for YouTube. So another key question is, well, what about legislation? Okay, so next slide. Well, there are some challenges. One of the biggest challenges facing social media regulation is jurisdiction. So for example, some forms of animal exploitation would be perhaps legal in one country, but not another, meaning it can be tricky in trying to prohibit such content entirely. There is some scope for dealing with individual cases of cruelty if the country or city can be identified in the video, but this too can be extremely difficult. To our knowledge, many social media platforms do not currently share information on animal cruelty crimes with law enforcement, such as the IP addresses of the users. This is something SMAC intends to challenge, as we do believe third-party platforms have the responsibility to aid law enforcement agencies when a crime has been committed against animals. Now, some countries such as the UK, France, New Zealand are now seeking to regulate social media on a national level in order to protect users from harmful content. These regulations are aimed at protecting children and vulnerable groups from damaging content. And us animal advocates have been lobbying for animal cruelty content to be included as well. This is very early days, but it is a real opportunity for animal NGOs. We believe that online harm should be recognized in new or updated national animal welfare legislation as well. And over to you, Nicola.
Thank you very much, Connie. Sorry, I'm doing screen sharing and trying to unmute myself at the same time. Okay, so what is being done about the problem? And more specifically, what is SMAC doing about this? So SMAC works with our 21 member organisations on the following key areas. As you've heard, we conduct extensive research into what the... Sorry, I'm being asked to start my video. Is that... Do I need to do that or can I continue? Okay, I'm going to carry on. We carry out extensive research and we have produced a series of reports to be able to highlight the problem of social media animal cruelty content, which we can then use in our conversations with the platforms and as an advocacy tool. We also are focusing on so-called grey areas. So some of those things that Winaya mentioned earlier that might be types of cruelty that are difficult for members of the public to spot. And also we, of course, then take all of this information and raise awareness with the public, because they are the ones that are on social media, that are seeing this, that are coming across this unknowingly perhaps, and have the chance to take some action at the time. And so we do also provide guidance on what it is that they can do when they are encountering cruelty content. Let's take a look at these a bit more closely. So from our reports from members and in our own experience, we quickly learned how crucial public awareness was to be able to bring an end to this content. And whilst we haven't carried out dedicated research on this, we do find that a lot of the comments and engagements on social media content can come from animal lovers and those people that are trying to raise awareness. Sometimes we find that most of the comments on a post might well be from animal advocates. But unfortunately, there is a huge risk that these people are inadvertently increasing the reach of this content. And this is because when we look at how social media works, it is a numbers game. So it's the most popular content is what the platform will prioritize and therefore boost. So the more engagement it gets, the more people it will reach and continues to grow. That's how content goes viral. Sadly, the algorithms don't differentiate between negative and positive engagement on content. So if you are putting a thumbs down face or an emoji, sorry, or an angry face emoji, it isn't being seen differently. So it's just all contributing to that overall engagement, which could then boost the post. If there is monetization on that content, as Connie discussed, then that could even potentially mean more money is being generated for the animal abusers, which is the complete opposite of what we want, of course. So I have a question for you all right now. Have you ever reported animal cruelty content to a platform? I'm not actually able to see the chat, so if someone could tell me what is being said, that would be really great. Someone from the team, maybe verbally, but what I'm expecting is that plenty of you probably have reported content because you are from animal advocacy organisations. And what I also want to know is, if you have reported content to the platforms, have you had the results you want? Has the content been removed? Again, I can't see the chat, so if someone could just indicate to me what kind of response we're getting, please.
Yes, Nicola, so they said yes. Not everyone have acted on reporting.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, the best tool that the public have right now is the reporting function. And we do hear from many members of the public that they do report content, just like yourselves. And we also hear that they don't get the results they want. So they report the content, it might not be removed, or they might even get a message from the platform saying that the content does not violate the guidelines of the platform. And so understandably, they're really frustrated and they have lost faith in the reporting. And we can completely understand that, because we know that the reporting functions on platforms are far from perfect. If you can find them, as Connie mentioned, sometimes they're difficult to find and don't have an appropriate category. But we also know that it is still crucially important that you do report content to the platforms. That's from our conversations with the platforms, because they do see that what kinds of content is being reported, and we need to show to them that animal cruelty content is a big issue, that it is something that the public care about. And we also want to be able to flag all the different kinds of content out there that we deem as cruelty content. We found from our own research that the data that we've collected and reported to the platforms, that around 47% of the content was eventually removed. However, it can sometimes take days, weeks, or even months to see that removed, and multiple reports. So again, it's far from perfect, but right now it is really, really important. It really aids us in our work with the platforms. And we do have some content being removed, which is obviously what we're trying to do. So much of SMAC's public education focuses on our 5 steps to stop animal cruelty. The first one is to be aware, and obviously many of you here, most of you here are animal advocates, so you will have an idea. But we have produced lots of public awareness materials, including our Ask Yourself series, which gives people prompts around really stepping back and thinking about what are they seeing? Is this good for the animal? Should this content be online? Then, of course, as we've said, do not watch the content, do not engage, because all of this can contribute to that monetization, to the popularity and the reach of the content. If possible, don't watch the content intentionally. Going along with this, do not watch, do not engage in the content, whether it's a negative or a positive comment. As we've said, do not do this. Do not share, even if it's to raise awareness on the type of content that's out there. What you should be doing is reporting the content. So that's directly to the platforms, as I've mentioned. And we have produced a series of videos guiding on how to report on 5 big platforms, which you can use yourself, and you can also share with your supporters and followers of your organization. So alongside the public awareness and research, our other side to our approach is working directly with the social media platforms. We've chosen to positively engage with them because we want to encourage them and assist them to make changes to protect animals. They have the ultimate power and position to do so, have so much change and impact, because if they change their policies, if they stopped allowing certain types of content and effectively enforced their policies, then it could be removed very, very quickly. So that's why we want to engage with them, and we want to make it positive. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't call them out, or that we won't stand up against them or speak publicly about their failings, but we want to try and have a conversation with them. The other thing that we do, of course, is knowledge and resource sharing, bringing together organisations that want to tackle this problem. And more recently, we've successfully been managing a subgroup of organisations who are wanting to focus on legislation, as has been mentioned in the talk, in particular in the UK Parliament, where they have now included animal cruelty content under the UK Online Safety Act, which is designed to protect social media users from being exposed to harmful content. So looking further into our discussion with platforms, we're currently working with Meta, YouTube and TikTok, and discussions have generally focused on why action is needed, why this is an important issue that they need to give their time to. We've, of course, talked around the need for them to improve their policies to capture all forms of cruelty content. We want them to, again, use their incredible platform to educate users, because, again, they've got the audience, they've got the means of putting out these messages. So to educate users about animal cruelty online. And of course, they have these tools, machine learning, AI, automation, and really they should be using them to capture and prevent this content from being found on their platforms. We've also focused on those priority forms of cruelty, such as primates as pets, which has been a big feature for us because from our data, around 80% of our content features primates. We've also, of course, stressed the importance of psychological suffering, and that's suffering that might not be direct and physical and obvious in the content. A really important part of our conversation is making sure that there is still room for legitimate content. So that's shared by our organisations, journalism, campaigning, so that of course we can continue to raise awareness about what is happening to animals. And an area we really want to explore is about the platforms sharing information with law enforcement, as Connie mentioned, so that we can actually help organisations who are tackling perpetrators on the ground. And results have varied, dependent on the platform and their willingness to engage. Bringing about change, as you will all know from your own work, in large companies is a long process. It takes a lot of negotiation, and it is still very, very early days in this work to tackle cruelty content online. But we have seen some general improvements in the community guidelines for all of the platforms that we've working with. And specifically in 2023, with working with us, TikTok launched its new Animal Welfare Centre on its website, which is, I'd say, one of a kind, really, in terms of it goes through what their position is, what animal abuse is, and it links to organisations and resource, including SMAC, about animal cruelty issues, which is a great platform for our organisations to have. As mentioned already, some of the platforms like Meta did also bring in a policy around fake rescue content, but we are finding that we need to keep pushing them because enforcement clearly seems to be a problem. And of course, with any project, it's really important that we're measuring results and impact. It can be really difficult because the scope of the content, we're talking about social media, we're talking about millions, billions of pieces of content. It's a real challenge, but we are, I believe, we hold one of the most comprehensive databases of this type of content, and we do this in-depth research to be able to try and find those changes and to back up the work that we're doing for animals. I think the overall challenge really is, message is that despite all the challenges, we're still going to do it. We have to do it because it's really important for animals. Thank you. Over to you, Ambu.
Thank you, Nicola. I think one of the first questions we would have now is that how does this impact your organization when, particularly when you likely may not have this as a main campaign or a focus area for your work? So the dominance of social media in communication these days and its global use really means that it has become a very easily accessible tool to promote and coordinate acts of animal cruelty. So when we take a closer look at these acts of cruelty that's featured in this content, this is where we see the real relevance to all of us who are advocating for animals, the relevance to all of our organizations. So SMAC has developed a list of themes to try and capture all forms of cruelty content that we see on social media, and this is available on SMAC's website. So we find content which appears to be very innocent forms of cruelty, for example, someone teasing a cat with a snake toy, all the way to planned and deliberate violent torture of animals. All this content is generated and created for profit. So here in this slide, we have highlighted some cruelty issue themes that many of the organizations who are here today, we are all working hard to prevent. So from bestiality to abuse and eating of live animals and wild animals in tourism and trade, content on primates, hunting, and use of endangered species. So all this content is promoting in one way or the other acts of cruelty to animals that every one of us are spending our time and resources trying to end. So in the next slide, we'll see 5 key reasons why tackling animal cruelty content is crucial to all our advocacy work. Particularly if you work on any of the issues that were listed earlier, or even if you don't, it really applies to all of the animal protection work that we do. So number 1 is animals are suffering. Like it was shared before, it could be physical or it could be indirect and psychological suffering to the animals. And number 2 is by really showing the public that it is okay for the animals to be treated in these cruel ways, animal cruelty is actually normalized, and content creators are really undermining all the educational work and efforts that every one of us are doing to preserve the rights and welfare for these animals. In fact, this could even encourage other content creators to commit similar abuses. And number 3 is social media platforms have really become spaces where animal cruelty can be organized, whether it's locally, regionally, or globally. So often these groups could be operating secretly, making it very difficult for organizations like us to track and investigate. And the 4th reason is that content creators are making money from animal cruelty, which really feeds into animal abuse industries, whether it's pet trade, illegal wildlife trade, or even wildlife tourism. This is done by monetization of content through advertisements on social media platforms, even worse, by asking for donations. And the last reason is that our own supporters and followers of organizations like us could be unknowingly making the situation worse by engaging with such content. So we really need to make sure that our supporters and followers and the members of public are made aware. So, and in the next slide, you will see that some content creators even imitate your organizations in a bid to legitimize their content, and in some cases, making money by asking for donations. So there's a lot of content that shows fake rescue of animals. It seems to be very popular and catches out many animal lovers who think that it is genuine. My family members have forwarded me fake rescue videos saying that this is very similar to the work that you do, which is really not true. And sometimes the videos showcase injured, ill, or even dying animals, and they are put in that state by the creator in order to film themselves rescuing the animal. Some claim to be animal sanctuaries or rescue centers where they're exploiting animals just to create more regular content so they could ask for donations from people who are really well-meaning and genuinely concerned about animals. So our question is, what can my organization do? What can you do? So SMAC is not trying to sign you all up as members today or expecting you to start a brand new campaign on this issue. But however, you're very welcome to do both of those things. So come join SMAC. But there are also some less resource-intensive actions that you can take to make a difference for these animals. Number 1 is really very simple, which is educating your followers on this content, especially if it's related to the animal cruelty focus areas that your organization works on. So promote these 5 steps that were shared earlier, which is not to watch, not to share, not to comment, even put an emoji. So raise awareness amongst your followers and also your own network and also staff members. So this is our main tool at present, and we really want all of you to keep promoting this. And if your work involves direct interactions with animals, please be mindful of how your content is portrayed on social media, how your work is portrayed on social media. We do not want to unknowingly give the impression that wild animals in particular, or they are safe or they are keen to engage with us humans. And also please use the SMAC content, reports, and advice in your work. These materials are created by SMAC for every one of us to use, not just for SMAC and its members. So please do take them from our website or reach out to us as well. And when you raise awareness, just remember not to reveal the handle of the content creator, because we don't want to unknowingly channel traffic to such content as well. And it's very exciting that SMAC will be launching a new NGO toolkit at the end of this month in March. So please do look out for the information on SMAC's website. And importantly, like what it was discussed earlier, is that if opportunities arise in your work area to secure legislative changes, law changes related to online safety or expanding animal welfare laws, please consider making a submission calling for animals to be protected from online abuse. This is something SMAC can definitely help with. And also report problematic content you find online to the platforms and also to SMAC, because it's very important that this information gets fed into SMAC's main database, and it will be used in all of the work that SMAC does, and it will allow us to understand the trends based on the data analysis and also how content is moderated by these online platforms. And also definitely liaise with SMAC to join the conversation with these online platforms as well. And over to you, Amanda.
Okay, thank you so much, Anbu and Nicola and also Vinaya. So this is the end of the presentation, and I just want to say that it is important that SMAC exists to bring together organizations working on this issue to strengthen our effort and our results for animals. Having a join-up approach, no matter where in the world you are based, means we can have a clear call to action for the platforms, government, and social media users. So that is why we encourage all organizations to utilize SMAC's resources and information and to reach out to us whenever you need. SMAC is not here to replace your effort, but to support them and elevate them however we can. And now we are going to our panel discussion, and we're still open for question. If anyone have question, please type it in the chat room. So, okay. Okay, we have some question, or just because we already do this presentation, like this is like the most exciting things that SMAC do, and people always excited like asking question, and this is few question that mostly people ask. I will, some of it is like, wait a minute. Okay. One question is it possible to locate and prosecute those who are carrying out acts of cruelty on social media? I think Taiwan SPCA have like the experience of catching, like doing investigation on animal depression, Connie?
Yes. Well, the first step, which is always, well, usually very difficult, like I mentioned, is to determine like where it is happening, where the abuse is happening. So if you can find the city, that would be the best. The example in Taiwan would be that our laws actually, if you disseminate severe cruelty or abuse on animals, if you disseminate that on social media or publicly, it's actually considered a criminal offense. So the police will get involved. But the difficulty here in Taiwan and most likely in other countries with us is with Meta. Meta does not work with government or law enforcement on cases involving animal cruelty. And there are no current laws that actually require them to do so. So what happens is when we do receive reports, we end up doing a lot of the investigative work. So we try to find more information on the perpetrator. We try to find where it's happening. And then we pass along that information to police. But we are trying to push for an amendment in the Animal Protection Act to change this. So we hope that it will require these third-party platforms to have to comply with law enforcement. So that is the future goal.
That sounds really interesting, and for the life experience of catching the criminal. So yeah, we have the next question is from which? From Synergia Animal. As an individual, what can I say to educate my older relative who share this type of content with me, thinking that I would enjoy it? So do you have any experience talking to like older relative about this issue? I think anyone can answer this. Please, Anbu.
I can go first because I mentioned earlier that my family members used to share. It took a while, and I think it's such an important question because we want to practice our advocacy skills within our home first. And it's important to explain with patients on the details. And it's great that SMAC has a lot of visual resources as well to show why it is wrong. And explain to them that this is not real. And the fact that they're actually sharing with us means that they care about these animals as well, and they care about something that we all work on. So it's a good opportunity to, turn that into an educational opportunity to talk to them. So I do share about these issues in my own family, relatives, group chat. So increasingly, the type of content they share has actually come down. So I wish to believe that it has worked to some extent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to share this issue into our closest surrounding, and then they will share to others. So, because I see in the presentation you're talking about fake rescue, I'm wondering, like, how do you differentiate between a real and a fake rescue, especially for like a public who doesn't know like what's going on? Maybe Nicola or Vinaya can answer these questions.
Yes, thank you. So we get this question a lot of the time, and it's actually the focus of a new spotlight report that we're producing this year. So we have our own sort of parameters or indicators around how we identify fake rescue, but part of this work is that we want to produce a more definitive, if possible, list for the public and others to be able to identify fake rescue. We do have a page on our website that has a lot of these indicators already, so hopefully you can find that useful. But some of the things that we look for is basically sort of taking a step back and looking at the wider account that is posting this video. And often you'll find that these pages have multiple videos of the same type, so lots and lots of rescue, similar to the screen that you saw of the page pretending to be an animal rescue, just lots and lots of videos. But yet there's very little follow-up on what happens to the animals and information about who is this rescuer, where do the animals go, are they a registered organization, do they have stories about what happens to the animals in the end, and you might even find that some of the animals look like the same, so we sometimes see the same individual used in multiple videos. There's also some kind of technical features that can help. So often the content can be the person's filming and they're sort of stood there for quite a long time before they actually move in and assist the animal, which is not likely in a real emergency rescue situation. The animal's care and needs should come first before just standing there and capturing it. But also you might see that it's been filmed from multiple angles. There's quite a lot of editing. But then conversely to that, we do see some content where this standing and filming it just happens for, say, 10 minutes solid, and no genuine animal welfare or rescuer would do that, would stand and watch the animal suffering in that way. I'm trying to think of other indicators now. Vinaya, you're always welcome to chop in because I know you've been working on this a lot. But yeah, I think also the legitimacy of the page and whoever's behind it is a real big one for us.
I think
Thank you so much, Nicola. Yeah. Do you want to add something, Vinaya? I'm so sorry.
Not really adding, but just want to say that Nicola has added all of this information perfectly. What I want to clarify is that to identify fake rescue is quite difficult, and I do want people to understand that it takes quite a lot of analyzing to really know, especially for people who doesn't have any background on animals. I do have an experience with my own parents that they find it quite difficult to really understand why this is cruelty, why the rescue is actually abuse. And I guess I think it needs practice as well, but if you understand, how do I say this? If you can analyze it often, then you'll figure it out what fake rescue is. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Inaya. Connie, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Like what Nicola said, I think there are always some clues that you could look for, like in the videos. I think as we should be like a thoughtful viewer, I think by asking ourselves some certain questions. For example, you know, would the animal be in this situation like normally, like would they be likely be in that situation or environment? For example, I know there's a channel where they have dozens of videos showing like dogs and cats with hundreds of ticks on its face, and then they're teaching people how to remove the ticks. But normally, you know, that wouldn't happen in a normal situation. Like we do like hundreds of rescues, and rarely, like we never come across a dog or a cat with hundreds of ticks on its face, and not to mention like they have dozens of videos showing this. So that would be something quite strange. Another situation would be it happens in Taiwan here. Unfortunately, there are NGOs who actually fundraise using rescue videos, but they don't actually help the animals. So we always ask supporters to do your due diligence, you know, and to double check if you ever want to support a charity that you see online. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Connie. So yeah, I think the biggest what is it, like a sign of a fake rescue is usually like you can't really connect with the content uploader, and also you don't know that the animal is safe or not. There's no follow-up for that. So yeah, that's really tricky, but yeah, you can go to SMAC website. There is like a lot of lists on how to identify a fake rescue. Okay, so there is a next question from Tu Hang Tran. So is there a social media platform that implement animal cruelty ban? Can you share the progress or effort to pursuing the platforms to act? I guess ACCREDITATION also have the experience on it. Nicola also. Connie, of course. So yeah.
Yeah, I can start on this. No, there is no social media platform that has banned all animal cruelty for many reasons. One, because it's defining what content would come under animal cruelty, and you know, there's lots of lines that are drawn by different people, different groups of society around what is cruelty and what isn't. SMAC generally has quite a wide capture of what we say is animal cruelty, because we believe it is, because there's evidence, because our members work on these issues, and we want to have as robust a response from the platforms as possible with their new policies. What we find is that the platforms have obviously quite different priorities to us as animal protectionists, and it feels as though it's going to be a slow piece by piece approach. So TikTok, for example, with their Animal Welfare Centre, I would say is the strongest outcome that we've had, that they're actually highlighting that animal cruelty content is an issue that needs to be addressed. Again, there's a lot more that can happen, but it's, you know, a lot of the platforms, their mention of animal cruelty is quite small. Some of them don't even have an animal cruelty category. So we're right at the beginning of this, and it is a difficult challenge to get the platforms to really prioritize this and give it the time, the resources to make the changes. There's also quite a pushback from them in that they want to be able to moderate content on scale. So, you know, which I think is reasonable, that they have to find ways that their moderators or their AI can clearly identify cruelty content, remove it, you know, across the huge worldwide, you know, space that is social media. So it is a big challenge. I don't want to sound too negative with that, because like I say, the work that happened with TikTok, I think, is very positive and is definitely, they've been really engaging, and I think is the way that we're going to be able to move towards having a animal cruelty content prohibited or reduced on social media platforms. If we're talking about them themselves, the other approaches could be legislation, of course, that forces them to have to remove some of this content. Anyone else like to add to that?
Anyone else have the experience? Okay, Anbu.
I think to add on to what Nicola mentioned is on, we are very grateful and very excited that TikTok is quite engaged in this topic with SMAC. And they have even visited our rescue center. So it's good to keep that engagement going and the commitment going. However, for others, I think the content moderation has been something that has not been delivered at different levels, even for very obvious illegal content like illegal wildlife trade. So, and often the challenge, like what Connie was sharing, when we investigate, the transaction has already happened, which means within a few hours, the animal gets sold already. So there is no way that we can track back who purchased the animal, who has the animal in possession. So the removal, once it gets reported, is something, I think it's a huge challenge, even though the community standards clearly state that it is not allowed, or graphic content, or certain definitions that is not allowed. So I believe there is there's already efforts that Nicola earlier shared about regulation. In my personal opinion, I think that is something that needs to progress in terms of moderating at earlier level to ensure that they have algorithms in place to ensure such cruelty content does not go up. And also there are measures that are stipulated by the law. If the platform do not comply to those regulations, what will be the consequences?
Yeah,
Yes,
if
please.
I could add to that. Yeah, I do also agree. I think legislation is so important. I think it's something that we should really be pushing in every country. I mean, I find it very, it's just horrible that third-party platforms don't seem to think it's their responsibility or they're at fault. Something to share from Taiwan, the government here is looking to amend our Animal Protection Act, which will require the social media platforms to take down content involving the illegal sale of pets, and also provide information to the government. So they're putting the responsibility on the platforms. But of course, we want them to expand the scope of this. But for, this is a great opportunity, I think, for us to push something through. We believe they should be responsible for more than that, of course. Mm-hmm. And I do want to mention the UK online safety bill, right? Which I think is so important because it will set precedents. Because as we know, internet is borderless. So if one country starts to regulate more diligently, then I believe there will be a snowball effect. So yeah, I think legislation is something we should be all be working on.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that we touch on in the presentation. Thanks for mentioning it, Connie, because I was going to go back to that, the Online Safety Act in the UK. Basically, this was a piece of legislation that was proposed around protecting vulnerable people and young people using online spaces, largely social media platforms. And there was a lot of lobbying done by advocates in the country and elsewhere to have animal cruelty content included on the in the bill. And at first there was quite a lot of reluctance from lawmakers. We did manage to have things read out in Parliament. They used SMAC's data, which we were so pleased, because again, that's from our volunteers, it's from members of the public, just to show that it had some real value and was used in a situation like that. And unfortunately, it seems like it took the release of the BBC documentary, which focused on monkey torture content, to really capture the lawmakers on this issue. And it did mean that they've added animal cruelty content to the bill now. And we're going through the consultation process at the moment around defining what is animal cruelty, what will be prohibited, what is damaging. And what's been really important in this conversation, yes, the monkey torture and the examples that we were providing were quite, shocking, some of them extremely graphic, but it was also about the user's experience. It wasn't just about, what was happening to the animals. In fact, the whole piece of legislation was about the impact on children and vulnerable adults. So that became a really important part for us to include in that conversation. So if there is anyone, out there who's looking to work on legislation in their country, we are planning to bring together, have a working group on this to share some of the resources that we have and the approach around the online safety bill in the UK. And we really want to, another one of our long-term projects is around looking at that link on the impact on children of viewing animal cruelty. And because we know that that's really valuable in tackling this issue, especially with lawmakers.
Okay, Anbu, you can go ahead.
I just want to add on to one of the comments in the chat as well, that we discussed it earlier, but it's so important that while the platforms are being engaged on the ground when we do education work, we can also reduce the demand for such videos, because this content is created mainly for monetization value and the commercial value and the money that content creators get. And that is something that only people here who are attending have the power to change when we raise the awareness. If people don't give the views, the likes, the comments, and shares, the value of such content will automatically go down. Yeah. And I just want to share from what ACRES does. It's because it's so easy. SMAC has made it so easy to use the materials. So we have a deck of slides for our humane education programs. We have inserted the 5 points that are shared by SMAC. We can just take it and insert into our slides and start the discussion. We also use a couple of videos that showcase hidden forms of cruelty, and we ask a critical thinking question to our audience. What do you think is happening here? Why is this bad or good? So we actually ask them to analyze based on the Ask Yourself section on SMAC. So that's pretty helpful. We make it into a discussion instead of a very preachy session of don't do this part. And we also mention this when there are opportunities. For example, it was World Wildlife Day, day before yesterday. So we had a radio interview last night. We spoke about online animal cruelty, because it's so easy for people to pick it up and act on it. It is not a big leap for them, individual members of public, to do it. And of course, adding some information on the website as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anbu and Nicola, and also Connie. I believe that working, contacting social media is a challenge, but I believe that the SMAC is like the start of it, and by working together with all the NGOs is, yeah, it's a long way to go, but it's starting. So yeah, and we are also like, thank you for all the volunteers that help us, creating this report. We can't really publish a report if we didn't have volunteers, and also for all the organizations that share the same vision to combat the animal cruelty content by using our resource or producing other resource, but with the same vision, as long as we have the same vision. That's really great, and we are really thankful for it. So yeah, maybe last question, because I believe that we have a lot of participants that came from NGO, and sometimes they got like question, or some people just like reporting the animal cruelty content to them, like, can you please rescue this animal, that kind of thing. So do you have any advice on that NGO on how to respond to that kind of request from the audience?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in again first here, just because SMAC does receive a lot of these emails and contact from the public. And to be honest, it is quite tricky because people are very passionate, and some people spend a lot of time finding out as much as they can about, the pages, maybe, identifying the same animals being used. And one of our challenges as SMAC is obviously we are a facilitator. So we bring together organizations working on this. We are not the ones that will be able to go and investigate or rescue animals. So we could pass that on to our members, but we also need to be mindful that organizations that we are in contact with do a lot of work already. And what we try to do is only pass on information that we think may have some potential to go somewhere. But we are actually looking at that this year around what is it that organizations would need that would actually be useful. And we need to really come up with ways of managing the expectation of the public who send us this information as well. We do have some standard responses that, we are not a rescue organization, and it is extremely rare, unfortunately, that we, some screenshots collected from Facebook will lead to animals being rescued. We all, as working in this sector, we all know that that's really difficult, even when there is evidence. So yeah, that is some work that we need to continue to do. Connie and Ambu, if you've got anything to add.
Well, what we ask the public to do is we have an online reporting form that they fill out. So we don't usually ask them to do the investigative work, although some members of the public, they're very enthusiastic about helping. But what we usually do is we do it ourselves. Like we'll look at the link that they provide, and we try to look for clues in the videos. Sometimes you can catch some things from the images or videos. But again, it's usually very difficult to locate where the animal is or where it's happening. But we have had, a couple successful situations where we were able to determine that it was not happening in Taiwan, that it was happening elsewhere, for example, in China, or there was another situation where we were able to find which school the perpetrator went to. So yeah, but these are like extremely rare situations, I would say. But yeah, we usually ask our supporters, if you see anything that you're concerned about, to fill out our online form, and then we'll try to investigate. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Connie, for your answer, and Nicola also. So yeah, I think to end this session, I will just give a little bit of conclusion. So I believe that SMAC is working with a lot of organizations, collaborate and sharing discussions about everything. And I believe that SMAC is also having resources that can be used with other people, everyone, public. So yeah, please go and check out our website, and please contact SMAC if you want to be our member organization, and just asking question, any advice, you can also come to SMAC. So yeah, maybe that's all. Anyone want to add something to end this beautiful session?
Yeah, I was just putting a note that our NGO toolkits, the first iteration of it anyway, will be on our website on the end of this month. Winaya's been working really hard on that, and it is free. It's hopeful over time we want to add more languages. So if there is some resources that you think would be great in a particular language, then get in touch and we can work together to produce those for you. And anything else that you think is useful. That, you know, we had feedback, like the great feedback that Andrew gave us about our resources already, and we just want to make it as easy and to find and use for organisations as possible. And you don't have to be a SMAC member. You know, being a SMAC member is great, but any little thing that you can do, public awareness is such a big part of that. So please help yourself.
Okay, maybe that's how we end this discussion. Thank you for everyone. And just like what Nicola said, do as little thing as possible, and that's already helping the animals. Thank you. Over to Lauren.
Thank you, Amanda. And also thanks to Winaya, Connie, Nicola and Ambu for such an important session. I've personally worked for SMAC for 1.5 years, so I know just how much work goes into tackling this issue. And I think SMAC is a really great example of how an AFA working group gets together with organizations from all around the world to work together on really specific issues and achieve a lot. So that was really great to hear, a really great session. Thank you so much, everyone. So if you would like to leave feedback about this session or about AFA Connect in general with all the sessions we've had today, please head over to this form. We'll also email it to you right after the event ends. Feedback allows us to understand your needs for the series of online events and how we can improve and be of even more help for animal organizations. So please take a moment to fill in this short form. It should only take a few minutes of your time. So today was AFA Connect's very first event, and we'll be hosting 3 more this year. So we have a second day tomorrow. But if you also want to attend future AFA Connect sessions, we have the information on our website at asiaforanimals.com/connect. So we have some sessions in June, August, and November. This year, we also have some really exciting in-person events, such as Asia Farm Animal Day in Hanoi, Vietnam, between the 9th and the 11th of October. And we also have more regional events in the Philippines and India, and we'll soon share the dates with everyone once we have them. Myself and the AFA team, we really hope to see many of you at these events. If you have previously attended AFA conferences or Asia Farm Animal Day last year in 2023, or if you have previously attended FAC's regional events, you just know how valuable these in-person events are and how crucial they are overall to the movement for all of us to continue our efforts to collaborate and work together, all in the spirit of AFA's main goal, to unite our voices for the animals of Asia. And speaking of voices, we also have launched this year the AFA podcast. So if you haven't already, I would really recommend checking it out. The episodes we have really so far are really brilliant. And of course, I am completely unbiased, but we have guest speakers from all around the world sharing their experiences and updates. So this concludes our event today. Thank you everyone for participating to the event. Thank you for the speakers. Thank you for the moderators and the whole AFA team. There's a lot of technical help that is going on behind the scenes. We'll be back tomorrow for our second day of AFA Connect. So goodbye, and we'll see you tomorrow.